Cabinet, add value to that, and there's a protocol for that. So this is just to look at that protocol, and again, our monitoring officer, John Softley, is going to present this report.
Chair, well, I wasn't going to add much more to what you've already said. There is statutory guidance for all combined authorities to adopt a protocol to govern the relationship between their executive, or in Norfolk Tyne's case, their cabinet, and the Scrutiny Committee. And this is the protocol which is proposed for that purpose. It has been approved by the authorities Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and it's there for the cabinet to consider.
Thank you, John. With us today is Councillor Gregor Roughhead, who is the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I don't know if you wish to add anything to those comments, Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a few words to say, and following on from what John said as well. So as chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, it gives me great pleasure to be able to introduce the first Cabinet Scrutiny Protocol for the North of Tyne Combined Authority. 12 months ago, when formulating the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's draft work programme for the year ahead, the idea of having an executive scrutiny protocol was first discussed. The desire to create a protocol came about in response to the latest statutory guidance published in May 2019. It was felt that by establishing a protocol over the course of the year, this would help embed a positive working relationship between the Cabinet and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Rather than creating an executive scrutiny protocol overnight or using a template, it's fair to say the approach taken with the North of Tyne was one where we wanted to create our very own protocol based on the existing customs and practices already developed within the combined authority. Sorry, just a second there. One practice worth highlighting within the document is regular meetings of the chairman, vice chairman, and scrutiny officer with yourself as mayor and other cabinet members and senior officers. These meetings help maintain a positive working relationship between cabinet, overview and scrutiny, and senior officers, and allow for sharing of information informally, which provides overview and scrutiny with an insight as to where we can assert influence and add value best. The protocol also provides details on the call-in process with all the relevant forms attached as appendices. This, I believe, is a good feature as it makes it much easier for both members and officers to be able to find all the required information in one accessible place should the call-in process be used. In early 2020, the scrutiny officer started composing the basis of the first draft in consultation with myself and the vice chairman. Prior to us taking a final draft to committee, it was at this stage we felt it more appropriate to name it a cabinet scrutiny protocol for reasons which are set out in the covering report you have amongst the cabinet papers. The cabinet scrutiny protocol, as John said, was unanimously approved at our committee meeting on the 10th of March this year. As a living document, it is important that the protocol be reviewed regularly to ensure it remains fit for purpose as possible and takes into account any changes that may arise from future devolution deals. Before closing, I would like to personally thank our scrutiny officer and my vice chairman for their support, work and time spent on developing this protocol. Finally, this document is an embodiment of the specific work stream that we set out to achieve by the end of this municipal year. Therefore, I would encourage cabinet members to approve the recommendation before them today to adopt the cabinet scrutiny protocol as part of the combined authorities constitution. If members have any questions or queries on the protocol, I'd be happy to take them now.
Thank you very much, Gregor. And I know you and I and your vice chair have been meeting regularly with the scrutiny officer, and I found those meetings very helpful. And we've continued to even manage to do that virtually during the lockdown. Does anybody have any questions on the scrutiny protocol? No? Okay. Are we happy to approve that scrutiny protocol?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. So this takes us on to item 7, which is the annual scrutiny report. Councillor Gregor Roughhead is up again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as this is our first ever scrutiny report, it's a real privilege to be able to present this to Cabinet today. But unlike what would normally be considered as an annual scrutiny report, this is unique in the sense that it's one that covers an 18-month period, because it covers the period of when the combined authority was established in November 2018. I'd like to start by thanking current and previous members for their work and contributions over the time period this report covers. I'd like to give a special thank you to my Vice Chairman, Councillor Linda Wright, for her support, hard work and dedication to the role as Vice Chair. Both our Scrutiny Officer, Elizabeth Kerr, and our Democratic Services Officer, Lynn Camsell, have been excellent support to the committee and myself. Both officers are truly committed to their work and are a credit to the combined authority reputation. I presume Cabinet members will have read the Scrutiny annual report, so I don't propose to go into a lot of detail, but here are a few things worth highlighting which I consider to be some of our successes from an overview and scrutiny perspective throughout the year. All of our overview and scrutiny committees have been quorate to date, as there's such a high quoracy threshold within the regulations, and it appears other combined authorities are having great problems holding quorate meetings. It is quite an achievement. All of ours have been quorate, and this reflects the dedication members on the overview and scrutiny committee have to their North of Tyne duties. Cabinet accepting all of our recommendations today, primarily the establishment of a 3-month forward plan and agreeing to undertake a review of the budget at a 6-month mark. The committee has, I think the committee has gelled well, and members work successfully together on a cross-party basis for the benefit and wider good of our region, and are now analysing and considering matters from a North of Tyne perspective rather than on a local authority perspective, which was when we first started. Throughout the year, myself, the Vice Chairman and the Scrutiny Officer have met with colleagues and counterparts at both combined authority and local authority levels. And this has been useful to discuss and share our thoughts on best practice with others actively involved in the scrutiny sector. I'm sure you can appreciate that at the time this annual report was authored, nobody could have seen the impact which has been caused by COVID-19. Looking toward a forthcoming work programme, in addition to the areas mentioned within the report for potential inclusion, economic recovery within the North of Tyne is certainly an area which we will now have to consider for inclusion. Next week, we have a workshop session organised online to start discussing what shape our work programme may take for the coming months ahead. And finally, I look forward to continue working with you all and strengthen the positive relationship which we have developed over the last 18 months between the Cabinet and the Overview Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gregor. I've got to say that the work with the scrutiny team and with yourself has been very good. You ascribed a lot of that down to the dedication of the members of the scrutiny committee, and your modesty has prevented you from saying that it's very often these things work if you have a good chair. It keeps the meetings interesting, relevant and tight. So thank you very much for all the work you've put into this. Is Cabinet happy to note this report?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much, Gregor. Let's move on to item number 7. That's the North of Tyne Combined Authority's role as the accountable body for the North East Local Enterprise Partnership. For the benefit of anybody watching, the North East the Enterprise Partnership needs a legal entity who enacts the decisions, who makes sure that everything is legal and above board, and that's transferring it. So Paul Hanson, who is the Head of Paid Service at the North of Tyne Combined Authority, is going to run us through this report. I hope.
Yes, no, thank you. This is a relatively straightforward report for Cabinet to consider. The detail of the transfer of responsibilities from the North East Combined Authority to the North of Tyne Combined Authority have been discussed with Cabinet members, the Board of the Rep, and most importantly, all of the staff employed by the Local Enterprise Partnership. The report spells out the responsibilities that the North of Tyne Combined Authority has to look after and act on behalf of the LEP as a legal entity, but it also explains that that is not in a manner that constrains the activity of the Local Enterprise Partnerships Board, but is there to make sure it enacts its decisions and can hold accountability for its responsibilities as a LEP. There are no specific issues for Cabinet to consider today other than to note that the transfer took effect from the 1st of April and the Combined Authority is now responsible for the Local Enterprise Partnership. Happy to answer any questions.
There don't seem to be any questions. As current chair of the LEP, Andrew, I just wondered if you wish to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I just wanted to say, first of all, the North East LEP takes its responsibilities very seriously, and therefore the provision of an accountable body is absolutely crucial to us. You know, we're responsible for a significant amount of public funds, and the ability to be able to rely on a body like the North of Tyne Combined Authority to provide our ultimate accountability is incredibly important. I just wanted to thank the team and the executive team within the North of Tyne Combined Authority and the representative local authorities, because the most critical thing within this has been the transfer of the 55 staff who have to formally transfer. Clearly, any role transfer between organisations is quite critical. It has personal impact beyond the things that might be obvious. And I just want to thank everybody who's been involved for their in making this happen. So thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. I know a lot of work has been done to make sure that people were transitioning in as a way that made them feel as secure as possible. So the recommendations is we're recommended to note the content of the report, which I will take as read unless anybody objects, to authorise our head of paid service to make delegated decisions on behalf of NTCA, in effect to affect the decisions made by the LEP as set out in paragraph 2.5 of the report. Is that agreed? Thank you. And to agree the reporting proposals as outlined in paragraph 2.6. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, this takes us on to item 9, which is the North of Tyne Combined Authority's corporate policies. Every organisation has to have corporate policies, as we know, and our aim is to maintain the very high standards of governance. So we have 5 reports, one on data protection and confidentiality, one on our environmental policy. It's notable that every single constituent authority is taking its climate responsibilities very seriously, as is the combined authority itself. Our qualities and diversity policies, which apply not only to our staff, but also to our programs that we run. And inclusive economy is at the heart of everything we're doing as the combined authority. Modern slavery, which is an issue that directly needs addressing, and this looks at issues such as supply chains, and the social value report, which is about making sure that not only do we get the best value for money for the public expenditure, but that we also use it in such a way as to achieve positive social aims in our region. So those have been available on the website in the public reports pack. I'm certainly not intending to go through all 30 odd pages of them. So does anybody have any specific questions or comments before we look at them? No. So are we happy to approve each of those proposed policies?
Approved, agreed.
Thank you. This takes us to item 10, the investment strategy. We're moving into a very interesting economic period, to put it as diplomatically as possible, during which there will be significant economic turmoil. This has led us to look at how we will approach our capital investment strategy. So on that, our Chief Finance Officer, Janice Gillespie, is going to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take you through the headlines of the report. As it said in the report, we need to consider the development of a capital investment strategy, which would set out the principles upon which the authority would consider capital investment in the future. So what this report does is set out some of those principles that we will consider in developing that strategy that would come back to Cabinet as part of the budget setting process later in the year. So really it was for Cabinet to agree those principles to allow us to take that work forward. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Janice. Those are in the public report pack as well, of course. And the recommendations, specifically paragraphs 1.4 and 1.6. Does anybody have any questions for Janice? No. So are we happy to recommend the approval of those principles? Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Janice. Which takes us to item 11, which is our update on our investment fund and the funding approvals. Councillor Pickard to introduce this item.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This North of Tyne Investment Fund report shows our work how to build an inclusive economy, to invest in green energy, and to support our growing digital, offshore and creative industries. It also describes the way in which we have worked collaboratively with our 3 local authorities to create the 5 million COVID-19 capacity fund, We are using our devolution powers to make our own decisions about our future and the communities we serve, and to create a more sustainable and inclusive economy. We're also using our local knowledge about our places to target investment where it will make real positive change to people's lives, to businesses and to the communities of Newcastle, North Tyneside and Northumberland. So far this year, we have committed 27.1 million against 31 projects and programmes, involving a defrayal of 800,000. We've attracted 99.51 million of private sector leverage, and with a forecast of 2,571 jobs. Specifically, our COVID-19 Capacity Fund, launched in May, will reach out to business and residents to provide guidance and support. We'll also support our VCSE sector, who help those in greatest need. It will help people who have lost their jobs to secure new roles, and it will seek to revitalise our town centres, our villages, and our local high streets, and the city centre of Newcastle. Our 3 local authorities and the combined authority will continue to work collaboratively through the development to strengthen the proposals and mitigate against any unfair disputes and disparities between the programme. Finally, Mayor, COVID-19 is not just an economic shock. It has affected us all, and through our investment fund, we will lead the North of Tyne recovery, both socially and economically. But in addition, we also lead it culturally. We have ambitions for the North of Tyne, and we share our vision of a dynamic and more inclusive economy that brings opportunities for our people to create vibrant communities and a good quality of life, narrowing inequalities, so we all have a stake in our region's future. This report shows the great progress we are making, and I recommend this report to Cabinet. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Does anybody have any specific questions or comments on the report before we move to the recommendations? So let's move through to the recommendations. First of all is to note the progress to date and the achievement of key milestones and ongoing development work, particularly in respect to delayed expenditure and project development around our priority sectors. We're happy to note that.
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And second recommendation is to agree that the head of paid service, in consultation with the investment panel, be authorised to approve change requests to projects previously approved by the Cabinet, as long as those requests do not result in an increase in expenditure of more than £200,000 or an extension of delivery by more than 2 quarters. And that's the details set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. Are we happy to agree with that?
Agreed, yes.
Thank you. Recommendation number 3 is to note the launch of the North of Tyne Capacity Fund to support local authorities' response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great.
Agreed.
I'm glad that's agreed, because we're working hard on it. Number 4, to note the progress to date on the offshore and subsea programme and the launch of the call for the offshore wind infrastructure project proposals.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And final one is to authorise the head of paid service, in consultation with the investment panel, to approve the application from Advanced Northumberland for £793,654 worth of funding for the Rural Design Innovation Project.
Agreed.
Subject to the conditions laid out there. I think that's agreed.
Yes.
With enthusiasm. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That has taken us to the end of the business, the substantive business for the meeting. The date and the time of the next meeting will be a virtual meeting again on the 28th of July. But just to say thank you to everybody else, all of the officers who've put this together, as well as the Cabinet members. This has been our first attempt at a virtual meeting. It has gone surprisingly smoothly, and we're all in a new learning curve. Thank you to everybody. Please stay safe.